Okay.
Good evening, everybody. It's 9:30 on the East Coast, 6:30 on the West Coast. On a Monday, that must mean it's time for your weekly Calamity Jane live stream. James, I know you're not looking at me because I'm having you do a test. I don't even know if anybody's hearing this right now. Hopefully they are. Um, but I changed up the settings a little bit, and I everybody saw that nice little intro screen, and I'm like trying to do some OBS foo to see if things are a little bit more professional looking. How's it going? Everything seems to be working correctly?
Yeah, everything is great. I had to shut it down because I got the echo effect because
Yeah,
it's a little bit delayed for the stream, but everything's perfect. It's great.
excellent,
So
excellent.
yeah, we have a little waiting room screen.
That's right, that's right.
So that's pretty cool.
Now
Nice job,
you,
Eric, on
yeah.
the tumbleweed and all that stuff. Pretty
Hey,
cool.
yeah, it's I so we were talking about this before we went live. I'm doing a lot of the marketing for my new gig, and it requires a better understanding of a lot of these technologies. I spend a large amount of my time actually living in Adobe's Creative Cloud suite of applications. Um, and I thought all of the stuff that I'm learning for my main job, I thought maybe I'd apply to some of my side projects. So after work today, I whipped up a quick After Effects file of that tumbleweed bouncing across the screen, which may be my most proudest moment in the last month or two, and threw it into OBS as an initial loading screen. So now, we have something that you can use to tell that we're streaming and that we will start soon.
That's yeah, it's great. What do we have before? Just do we have black screen
It
or
was
what?
just
I'm
nothing.
confused.
It was just nothing, and
Okay.
then it would just appear. It would just start, right?
Okay.
And
Cool.
we've done that for years, and I just thought, it is actually way more convenient for people to know that things are happening if we can sort of like, hey,
Mm,
by the way, things are starting soon. So,
yeah.
um,
Sweet.
it's the screen is a little bit of a work in progress, though the tumbleweed will not change. That's a permanent fixture. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I sort of like just it was a little bit before we started. I went ahead and threw that like background image together, and it's a little bit empty. It still needs a little bit of work. Well, I'll futz around with it and play with it, and it'll probably evolve over time. So
Pretty cool.
yeah, yeah.
Nice. Nice job.
So
Um,
anyway, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. I guess we'll. Yeah, I mean, you kind of started up with some animation stuff, so I'll keep it going and do some more animation stuff at
That
this
sounds
rate.
good. That sounds good.
So I will share screen. Um, last about 2 weeks ago, I think when we were last hanging out, I was working on a couple of shots with Clem 3/4 back, Mitchell 3/4 back. I'm also going to finish off the rest of the scene with getting some assets ready for Mayor and Wanda
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
from our townsfolk, just to get them in the scene. Right now, I'm not happy with the scaling just yet, everything. So I'll kind of, I mean, this is all originally a sketch anyway, but this is where now that we're in animation mode, I will kind of start finagling stuff. But I mean, I can still get the raw asset and scale it up or down because it is vector, so we don't have to worry about it having to be pixel perfect. So yeah, that's gonna be the plan. So I have Wanda here, front and Molly, and I have Mayor here as well. So I'll be working on both of them tonight and trying to figure out which one. So yeah, Wanda and Molly and Mayor. Yeah. So
Perfect.
that's the plan for today.
That's lovely. So I watched your stream last week while I was out and about. I apologize everybody for disappearing. I got last second tickets to go to a punk concert, and when you get last
Hey,
second tickets to go to a punk
yeah,
concert, you gotta
you
go.
have to go.
You gotta
You gotta
go.
go. Absolutely. So I don't blame you one bit. So yeah, I fly the ship solo. It was very lonely, Eric. That's me playing under guilt. Because I can only
Yeah,
talk about
yeah.
I mean I would talk about animation stuff for the most part for last week because I couldn't really fill the space talking about going back and forth and debating about pop culture stuff with you. So it'd be
Sure.
kind of weird for me. So anyway, so yeah, you watched the stream, so I'm glad you did. Um,
I thought it was a lot of fun.
checked in.
I actually thought it was a fun change of pace. I mean, I don't, obviously it's more fun to see the animation happening while we geek out on random things, but
Mhm.
I enjoyed listening to your process and how you put everything together. I thought it was. I think maybe we'll do more of that. Like maybe I can find some way. I don't know. Like nothing that I do is particularly visual, unless people are interested in watching me put together an After Effects file. But I can't imagine that that's that fascinating. But I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, we should do that. I mean, I know you're getting more into After Effects, and that's great. Um, I mean, I use After Effects as well, but it sounds like you're really kind of you're getting in the weeds with it. So I think it's worth it to do a stream one of these days where we'll pick out something that we need to do in After Effects, and then we'll have you do a run with it, and see how it goes.
Oh God, yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah, if you
don't
feel
threaten
like it. If
me.
you don't, no worries.
Oh
No
no
worries if you
no.
don't. You
Look,
know.
jumping in on the deep end is honestly how
Yeah,
I learn, right? I mean,
yeah. So
I
yeah,
remember
I
when
think
the first lighting install I did at a theater, I knew what DMX was conceptually, like in a lab environment, right? I understood the standard and I understood the notion of channels and that kind of stuff.
mhm.
But I'd never installed a lighting system. And then a guy asked me because I can talk a big game when I want to. And the guy who owned the theater was like, "Do you want to do the install?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'm an expert on this." And I'm like, "Oh shit, what am I gonna do?"
Why not?
Yeah,
Why not just say you're an expert and just see where the chips may fall? I guess, right?
and yeah, and because I had to learn on the go, because it was sort of a do or die situation. Um, like I will never until the day I die forget how DMX, the DMX standard, right? Like
Hmm.
it is hardwired into my long-term memory because of the circumstances by which I had to learn it in a practical sense as opposed to just sort of an academic sense.
Hmm.
Um, and so there is something to be said about sort of jumping into the deep end, right? Because
Well,
if I hadn't
so
had that experience, like a lot of the gigs that I got later on would not have manifested.
I mean, you'll have to educate me because I don't recall what DMX actually is. I've heard the term before,
Yeah.
but yeah. So give me. I mean, I'm sure there's other people out there that may not know either. So I mean, if we're on the subject
What?
anyway, uh,
Not everybody understands the lighting standard for theaters?
yeah, yeah. It makes
Um,
me wonder, like, how many times I'm talking about animation and maybe I'm talking about something. But see, what I'm happy for is like you and I are hanging out, so you
yeah.
can ask the question and kind of let me know if there's something that's kind of confusing. But yeah, that's now it's my turn. I'm
Uh,
not quite sure what DMX is, so
so what it
I'm.
stands for is digital multiplex.
Mhm.
So a DMX signal is a digital multiplex signal. It is a lighting standard that was invented, I think, in the 50s or something along those lines. It's been around for a long time. And it's how all, well, most, a vast majority of lighting systems are set up. Basically, what it is you
Okay.
have a controller board, whether it is a physical board with actual physical faders or a laptop or iPad or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Ultimately, what
Mhm.
matters is that this controller sends signals, sends data out along a series of channels up to 255 um, at 512 different addresses across 1 to 2 universes, and all this is getting super in the weeds. But basically, what it is like, okay, if you have this DMX address, 512, or no, I think is it 512? Yeah, I think it is. If you have this DMX address, let's say your DMX address is 80. Okay, so you take your device. Usually it's lights, but it could be fog machines. It could be pyrotechnics. I've seen videos of guys hooking up like flamethrowers to a DMX board. Anything,
Wow.
any device that's electronic um, can basically be hooked up to a DMX signal if you put in the right, electronics into it. So you take your in this instance, let's just assume it's lights. You take your light that has been enabled for DMX and you set its address to 60, right? Now, on your board, if you move that fader at address 60 and that light is properly set up at address 60, it will do something, right?
Okay.
And that's it. So let's say that you have
Okay.
just a really simple halogen par can, right? Which is a very basic. parcan is short for parabolic, and then can, because old school lights used to look like cans with a bulb screwed into them. So it's a parabolic light. So parcan, let's say you have a basic halogen parcan. All it is, it's got a single address, 60. It's got a dimmer effect, from 0 to on, that kind of thing. Um, you can take, from your control board, you've got your fader. You can move that fader up, and it'll take that value from 0 to 255 and send that value to any device that's, in this instance, that light that's at address 60, and it'll go, okay, your value is now 50. And the light will go, oh, my value is 50, so I'm going to turn my dimmer, luminosity up to 50%, right?
Okay.
Or whatever, not 50. I mean, it's 255, so whatever half of 255 is. Anyway, and so you can, and then the great thing about DMX is it's path through, so you can chain things together, right? So you can wire up, 200, 500, whatever lights, as long as you have enough DMX addresses within your universe, and you can use it all in a single chain. All of the lights are effectively connected to all of the other lights, right?
Okay.
DMX is a one-way signal. What that means is that the board can talk to the lights, but the lights can't talk to the board. The only thing that the devices on the chain do is it receives information and responds to that information. So if a light is burnt out, it can't send that information back to the board.
Yeah,
right?
you have to actually visually.
You have to visually confirm it, right? Exactly. And like I said, anything can realistically be put on a DMX. Fog machines, lights, pyrotechnics, dimmers, right? So a dimmer is used when you want to put a light onto your DMX chain that isn't set up for DMX, but it can respond to different voltages, so it can be dimmed. So like I've seen shows where they have plugged in a bunch of just floor lamps into a big dimmer board and then can control the floor lamps
from a master
controller using the dimmer intermediary, right? It's really it's fun technology. Anyway, it's super nerdy. It's theater tech stuff, and it's kind of where I live, right? Like I am this really mixed sort of technical creative type, right? Yeah. And lighting is that perfect blend of technical and artistry that is just like right up my alley, right? So I can futz around with all of the hardware and the technology, but at the same time, I can then turn around and like get on stage and like do a light balance and get all the lights positioned. And then when I get on the board, I can create these really pretty color tableaus and things of that nature. And so doing theater tech is actually like just right. My brain loves it. Like my brain loves the problem solving and artistry of that kind of thing. So, I kind of fell into it. I discovered it sort of accidentally, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, shit, I can do this.
Sounds pretty technical though.
It is. Yeah. It's also dead simple though. Like everybody always thinks that you're working some kind of magic. I remember I at the theater that I work at currently, I did it, I priced out a bunch of equipment, and they bought all the equipment, and then we got it all, and I started just like plugging it in to do a technology check to make sure everything worked before we set it up. And it was so funny because I got the light and I got the board and I plugged everything in, and I just a light, and I connected it to the the lighting control board, and I turned everything. I got all the addresses set up, and I pushed that fader up, and the light turned on, and they were like, "Oh my god!" I mean, it was practically magic, right? I'm like, no, it's really easy. Don't worry. This is like really basic stuff. But no, I do really enjoy it. But yeah, so yeah, that's basically lights, and the technology modern technology, obviously you can do a lot of stuff with computers, and they have wireless interfaces now where you can connect everything technically through DMX, but instead of through a DMX wire, it's all wireless. but I'll be honest, like I'm old school. Having things being wired is just a lot more dependable than trying to
Mhm.
deal with wireless signals and the latency that necessarily comes from wireless. Um, and yeah, so I will always, given the opportunity, use a wired system
Mhm.
rather than a wireless system. Um, but no, I
So just
you
to
know
make sure I get just to
yeah
make sure I get this right though. So DMX actually is all encompassing anything that's hooked up to that switchboard up in that black box up behind the audience. That's considered DMX. It can be anything.
yeah
Um,
anything that is plugged into that signal. Yeah.
that board.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then here's another question. I always, it's funny. Like I did stage crew in high school, but that's when I was a child. So
Yeah.
my memories of doing all that stuff is pretty much all gone. But there was one thing I always wondered: is there ever a way to do timing with lighting, or is it
Hmm.
all manual with the tech? It
Nope.
has to actually dim the lights up and then lights down, or I time it within like half an hour, then the lights come up or down. Then you could actually kind of lean back and have your sip your Coke, and then you're good. Like
I
do they
mean,
have that now?
yes, you could probably yes. So, yeah, absolutely, and that's been around for a while. The
Mm,
main standard, because most theaters use Mac products, is it's a show called QLab. Oh, wow, I forgot it for a
okay.
second. And yes, it does exactly that, right? So you launch an instance of QLab, you create your QLab file, and you go Q1. I want the lights to do this. I want the sounds to do this. I want this to do this, do this. I want it to go on for this long. I want it to fade out here. I mean, you can just like do a whole laundry list of things at each cue, right?
Hmm.
And then you go, okay, great, that cue's done. Now moving on to the next cue. Okay, now this cue, I want that light to fade out. I want this light to fade in. I want this sound effect to play. And you can set up as many cues as you need for a particular show. And it's QLab is so funny. I mean, it's just so dead simple. You've got your list of cues, and you click on the cue, and on the right side, it shows you everything that cue does, right?
Hmm.
And on the top left-hand corner of the screen is just this big giant button, digital button that you can't miss that just has go written on it, right? And when you press go, it goes to the next cue, right?
Oh,
And
okay.
so you can, and I worked on a project a couple of years ago, where it was a lot of cues, and I worked on a project this year too with a lot of cues, and we used QLab for it. And yeah, it's really cool. Like there's a lot of upfront work of going, okay, here's a new cue, here's what the light intensity needs to be, here's how long the fade in time needs to be, here's how long the decay needs to be. Here's how long the sound effect takes before it fires at this cue, etc., etc. But
Hmm.
then once it's in, then the only thing that the theater tech has to do on show day is press that go button at the right time to trigger the cue. Right. Now that's Mac only. I don't know why they've never ported QLab over to a PC environment. Whatever. That's just the way it works. On the PC side of things, and it's basically just QLab. It's called ShowQ
Hmm.
system. That's what if you're going to use a PC, that's what you use is ShowQ system. But yeah, so that's how you set it up. Is that the that piece of software? It connects to whatever your controller system is, whether it is a light board or just within another laptop, right? You connect that QLab into the light board, and so what happens is QLab you press go on QLab, it fires a cue, and the cue says, okay, this DMX address set the intensity to 157, whatever 157 means to the device that's at address 167. And then it does it, right? It sends that signal out and it does it. And then you press go again and it fires a whole sequence of other systems. So QLab is really, really, really powerful if you've got a system and infrastructure set up to support it.
Yeah, but that sounds actually kind of scary too, because if you have, it almost feels like a set of dominoes. If you have everything perfect, it's great. But what if one thing goes wrong, or
Everything
especially
falls
with
apart.
theater,
Yep.
yeah, what if like in theater they have to improv something, like somebody forgot their line, and all of a sudden the whole thing is set
Right.
up to be run
Which
perfectly, so you have to actually be
yep. Which is
live
why
as
yep.
the yeah, okay,
Right. Which is why you can't just automate it. Right. You do need a person
yeah,
there to press that go
yeah,
button. Right. Um,
That's crazy.
yeah, no, you'll never be able to get rid of theater techs. We've made it so it's impossible to get rid of us.
Oh, I'm sure they're trying to figure out an AI way of doing that with everything
Yeah.
else they do, right? So yeah,
Um,
you're right.
but
For
by
now, yeah, your job is safe for now,
right.
for sure.
But by the same token, though, like most of the things that I do are improv. So things like show Q system and QLab, they don't work because QLab only works if you can guarantee that every show, every night is going to be the same show, right? The actor is going to move to their mark at this point so that when you hit go on the next cue, the light turns on as they're entering their mark, right?
Hmm.
Improv, you don't have that luxury. And so most of the shows that I do, I don't really use any like automated queuing system because I don't know where an actor is going to be when they're going to be it. I don't really know how long a scene is going to be, right?
Hmm.
And so when I'm doing a show, I'm usually doing everything in real time because that's just the nature of improv. Um, and so as a result, you have to be very familiar with all of your tools. You have to be familiar with your board, or if it's a laptop, what the laptop is capable of doing, and being able to change the scene parameters in real time as the actors perform, right?
Hmm.
What what
Sounds intense, Mr.
it's
Eric.
I guess it is interesting. I've been doing it for so long now that it is there's a lot of muscle memory involved at this point, right?
Yeah, but I bet you get a little bit of adrenaline, like just like with performing on the stage, there is an adrenaline rush just doing the tech because
Oh yeah.
everything you're carrying a lot of stuff too. You're pretty much almost the nervous system because of anxiety, or the skeletal system for the production. You can't see if the lights don't work, you're not going to see anything
Yeah.
on the stage, right? So
Yeah, I know
yeah,
exactly. I mean, that's the thing is you have a lot of power in the booth because if an actor is pissing you off, then you just don't turn the lights on.
you turn off their spotlight
Right,
as they're
you just turn on their
performing.
spot and then it's like, all right, you're gonna perform in the
Terrible
dark.
lighting. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um but no, it is. I mean, it's hard work and you do um you get good enough. I mean, I feel like this is anything that it becomes mundane in a way that you forget isn't mundane, right? I did a show over the weekend. It was just a variety show. It wasn't the hardest show I've ever done. It wasn't, I mean, it was middle of the road, right? And I got at the end of it, and everybody was like, "Dude, thank you so much. That was so good. That was, that was like you were on point, so professional. You knew what you were doing. Like all the lights were great. I really appreciate it." I'm like, "Yeah, you're welcome." And you're like, "Oh, I guess I forget that this isn't a thing that most people know how to do, right? Most
yeah,
people
yeah,
don't understand that. Most people don't have the training or the experience to understand when a light needs to turn on. I mean, one of the performers um, at one point just said, "Hey, could you just throw a spot on me from stage to the booth?" Right? And I
mm,
did it instantly. Like it was second nature to me. But someone who wasn't familiar with the system, wasn't familiar with the terminology, wasn't from such a simple ask would have been far more complicated for someone who was new to it, right?
mm.
Um, and it is interesting how easy it is to forget how complicated doing tech is when you've been doing it long enough that it becomes muscle memory, right?
Mm.
And I feel like that's the same for any skill that you do it long
Yeah,
enough, and the things that you find easy are actually extremely difficult for a vast majority of the people, right?
yeah,
Um, and yeah, it's just one of those things that it is interesting to um like that night I went home and I got all these compliments and I went, oh yeah, that is right. This isn't simple. This isn't like, yes, if you know what you're doing, anybody could do it, but most people don't know what they're doing. And I don't mean that like in a negative sense. It's a pure
yeah.
just inexperience. They've never been behind a light board before or whatever. Um, So anyway, I that's just rambling. I don't think that there was any real point to that. Suffice it to say, it is more complicated than I give it credit for, just because I've been doing it so long.
Hmm.
That there is sort of a second nature effect that comes into it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think I mean that kind any kind of discipline when you practice it long enough, that's the beauty of it is if you do make it look easy, that means you've gotten so comfortable with it that yeah, people take it for granted in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that goes with almost any kind of skill, whether it's carpentry or I don't know, electronic fixing, computer repair, anything.
Yeah.
Um, but we as humans, we just kind of go, oh wow, it's magical, and then we just kind of take it for granted, and then we kind of just look at it and wonder, how'd you do that? Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Although that being said, when the apocalypse comes, yeah, I got nothing. Like I went and
You
hung
have
out
no,
with
you
them.
don't watch Naked and Afraid, none of those survival shows to at least get
Mm,
something to
no,
nothing.
alas, I do not. Although I bet the
Uh,
lighting is good on those.
yeah, it's great. That's for sure. Yes, that's true. Lighting is
um,
really good.
I went and had like just a guys' night with some friends yesterday, and we made handmade sushi. Well, I say we. I just brought the sake, right? Other people like
Okay, that's great.
prepared the food, and we ate. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And we were just chilling after the fact, and a couple of the guys were talking about how they're making these homemade gardens in their backyard, and one of them is starting to like they're like gotten into bee husbandry, and they've got like their own
Uh-huh.
chicken coop and just all of this stuff, and I'm listening to them going, I could not do any of that. When the
Yeah,
apocalypse
sounds.
comes, you guys are going to be in good shape. Meanwhile, I'm going to be like, anybody need me to move a fader up and down on a light board? No? All
Uh,
right, I'm just going to
oh,
go stand over here.
yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat you are. I mean, anybody need a Wacom
Right,
tablet
right.
pen operator on a stone tablet? Yeah, kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it
Um,
is it is interesting. I mean, I am a product of the existence that I have, but it was an interesting experience to listen to them talk about these very applicable and useful and enviable skills that they have, and be remarkably jealous of their ability. Like,
mhm.
damn, I should like learn an actual skill.
Well, I mean, you do got. I mean, well, I mean, you have a skill. It's theater stuff. I mean, it's not apocalypse skill, but
Yeah.
hey, you got that though. So until the power goes out, you're good.
I
So
mean, yeah, the rationalization I always tell myself is that even in the apocalypse, people need art, right? So there you go. That'll
hey, you
be
can play the
the
guitar. I think
yeah.
I've seen you play the guitar
I play
once. You
bass. No one cares about that.
hey, you still need bass. I play drums. I'm terrible. I'm not that great at it, but
Yeah, yeah,
hey,
yeah.
you and I could start a little apocalypse band.
That's
Terrible
right.
as it
That's
may
there you
be,
go. We
but
could start our apocalypse band. That's it. And
yeah,
that'll be the name of our group, the Apocalypse Band.
apocalypse
Yeah.
band. Yeah. Um, on a different note, I don't know if you've seen the trailers for I don't know if you've seen the trailers for Furiosa just yet. I mean, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, but I don't know if you're having your slate to watch it or not.
My
But there's some
buddy
interesting,
my buddy got
yeah.
passes for the press showing on Wednesday. So I am
Oh, so you're going to it.
going on Wednesday. Yeah, yeah.
So
I
how do you feel? How do you feel about this?
The reviews
I
have
know
been
it's
just ungodly good. Like just ridiculous. I don't think anybody has had anything bad to say about that movie from the early reviews that have come out.
okay.
I like Chris Hemsworth a lot. Everything that I've
Hmm.
seen of that character, I'm like, yes, this guy, he's going to be an amazing villain. I'm really excited about seeing him.
Hmm.
We have talked about this ad nauseum, so I don't want to beat this dead horse too much, but I am not a huge Anya Taylor-Joy booster.
Uh-huh. Sure.
And you know, the whole movie rests on her shoulders as Furiosa, and I am an absolute Charlize Theron booster. And so
Yeah.
there's no doubt that I'm going into it with a preconceived bias, right? Like,
Hmm.
I don't think there's any way for me to watch this movie without comparing Anya Taylor Joy's performance to
It's
Charlize
impossible.
Theron's, right?
Yeah, you have to. I
Yeah.
mean,
And so, I mean, I think that that is the thing that it's actually it's that and the fact that Fury Road is one of my top three favorite movies of all time.
mhm.
And in fact, I'm probably gonna watch it tomorrow night in preparation for the movie on Wednesday. Um, uh, so this movie, which serves as a prequel to Fury Road, it's got some pretty big shoes to fill,
Yeah.
and so I acknowledge fully, like when we talk about this next week, that you have to temper my perspective given my very admitted, right? Oh, I'm owning my biases going into this movie.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
yeah.
There's some interesting tidbits that I kind of picked up. Like, I don't know. I mean, the reviews are good. I think in general, they're very favorable. I don't know if it's gonna reach the heights of Fury Road, but they are good. So it's gonna be right up there with the rest of the.
Mm-hmm.
I always consider all of them. All of them are are pretty fun. Although
Beyond
Thunderdome's a little bit,
Thunderdome.
yeah, it's a little bit. It's kind of hokey with the. I think that's one where he's trying to protect the kids, right? Protect the children, all about the children thing, right? So it's been a while since I've seen it, but it's still cool. It's still cool seeing that universe and seeing it all fleshed out.
I'd
Um,
watch it again. It's better than
yeah,
you remember.
okay,
So yeah, the kid part is weird, but it's actually kind of a self-contained subplot, right?
yeah,
Once
yeah, yeah,
once Max makes it out of there, you don't really see those kids again. Um,
yeah.
Tina Turner being cast as the big bad was an odd choice, and then having her write the theme song for the movie was an odd choice. But keep in mind that this is, being done in
In
the
the 80s,
80s. Yeah,
height of her
and
powers. She
right,
was the
and
diva back then.
exactly. And so there was this particular vibe, and if you can watch it through that lens and be aware of sort of the strengths and the weaknesses of that era of filmmaking, it's actually there's some really really great moments. I mean, come on, like two men enter, one man leaves. Like everybody's chanted that
Mm-hmm.
at some point. There are iconic,
Mm-hmm.
memorable in Master Blaster, right? I mean, like there
Yeah.
are amazing aspects of that movie that people kind of gloss over because it, without a doubt, is the weakest of the original trilogy. It's the weakest of all four of the movies. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I listened to an interview with George Miller about the making of it, and he what he says is that he made that movie very shortly after a very close person in his life died under very
Okay.
very unexpected circumstances, and he watches the movie and he was like, yeah, I was still too emotionally broken at
So he
that
was
point.
grieving probably.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of his grief comes through in that movie, according to him,
Oh,
which I thought was
okay.
very interesting. And knowing that, watching that movie with the understanding that as Miller was writing and producing and directing it, that he was grieving through that whole process, it really changes the vibes of that movie big time.
So you changed your perception of the movie as a result of
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm. There are still hokiness. There are still things that just don't work. But watching it through the eyes of a filmmaker who's grieving, it totally changes the vibe of Beyond Thunderdome.
Huh.
That being said,
Yeah,
it
I'd
still
like to.
pales in comparison to the Road Warrior or Fury
Uh,
Road.
yeah. Um. Yeah. It does look. I mean, I'll wait to see what you say, and then I'll end up going to see it as a based on your review. I think on this one. I'm torn because I do like pretty much all of Miller's movies, so maybe I should just go see it anyway because I do like. I mean, he doesn't disappoint, so I'll probably still go see it. I am in the same boat you are. I just huge Charlize Theron fan, so I just don't see anybody else playing her. She's that incredible of an actress that yeah, she just pretty much embodies that role. So I don't want to see any. It's not against Anya Taylor Joy. It's just I don't want to see anyone else play it but her. I'm sorry, I'm spoiled. She's terrific
Mm-hmm.
um, in that role, but it is Miller doing it, so maybe it's worth a shot to go see it anyway and see the director's artwork. on screen.
Yeah.
Could be good for that. So for me, I've been
And Chris
preparing.
Hemsworth. I mean, everything that I've seen of
Yeah.
him in that role, I mean, he looks amazing. Like I'm really excited to see him as the villain.
Hmm.
I think this is a great turn for him, and yeah, I think he's gonna have a really memorable performance.
So meanwhile, I'm trying to prepare sort of to maybe see this movie. And now that we talked about it a little bit, I'm actually talking myself into wanting to go see it now. But we'll see. But I've been playing Mad Max on the PlayStation 4/5, whatever it was released on the 4, but I play on the 5. Um, it's a really good. It's if you're missing that Mad Max universe in that world, that game is extremely solid. It's a really good game, but it's interesting because there's so much. Here's where we're gonna get in the weeds with hearsay and conspiracies and all that kind of stuff. So Miller apparently, and I read this. Maybe we'll link to it in a YouTube video. There's a YouTube video of another YouTuber that went through the whole history. Huge Mad Max fan, went through the whole history of the games that were made for Mad Max. And so like there's been 3. So this one, Mad Max on PS4 is the latest one, I think. But there was 2 other ones, and they were not well received, and they were pretty much terrible. And there was always false starts. George Miller actually tried to actively get into making the games and befriended, for example, whoever the game director was that was making the Fallout games. And that's why Fallout is the way it is, because they were actually trying to make a game together in this post-apocalyptic world, and then things fell through. So they made Fallout kept happening, but George Miller, for whatever reason, something else. Yeah, so there's all kinds of stuff. I'll send you the link, and maybe we'll put it in the description.
I'm very confused. I'm very curious. Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, this game, the game I'm playing, I thoroughly enjoy it. I love it. It scratches my itch for playing around in the Mad Max universe and stuff. But in the credits, and again, this is pointed out, paraphrasing the YouTuber, George Miller's name's nowhere in the credits.
Interesting.
So,
I'm not happy about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but meanwhile, so a Swedish studio, I think a Swedish studio made the game, Avalanche Studios.
Avalanche, they're the guys who did Just Cause, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So they made the game, and it's a solid game. And so what happened was when they were making the game, they got all of George Miller's notes for making sequels to Mad Max. And so they have all these little tidbits of information that are thrown into the game that you wouldn't see. That if you're itching to see a Mad Max sequel, well, there's tidbits of it in the game. But it's George Miller's not signed up on it, but that's his ideas. And like even in the movie, there's some subtle little fan stuff. If you play the game and you know about some of the characters, they're referenced in the movie, I think. So it's a really weird mixed bag. Playing the game, knowing that George Miller didn't put his name on the game, and the WB games, of course, still went through with it, but the game itself is solid. But yeah, I found that kind of interesting. I do think it's worth a playthrough. It just feels like a Mad Max universe type of game. It's a very good, with all the myriad of licensed games that you get that are from movies, this is one of the top licensed games for a movie that I've seen, that I've ever played. But yeah, it's a mixed bag because they just took George Miller's ideas, but yet it's in Mad Max, so that's his idea. So we all know it's George Miller's, but yet his name's not on it. So you're always, as a fan, I'm struggling as I play the game, like, oh man. But yet it feels like a George Miller, because his ideas are like a lifeblood through the game. It does feel like a George Miller sequel or a adjacent kind of a like Legends of Mad Max kind of a thing. You feel to it, maybe not canon, but really good. So that's a shout out for the game itself. I think they did a great job on the game. And then also, this is kind of interesting too. Again, because I'm just kind of geeking out online. But did you ever read the stories about how Hardy and Charlize Theron didn't get along very well on set, and it was a troubled set, and Hardy was kind of difficult to work with? So this now that I know that, it kind of makes me go, oh, okay, this is probably why he's not making a next Mad Max. Maybe there's he doesn't want to work with Tom Hardy next time. He wants to work with somebody else. And even in this Furiosa, I think there's a Mad Max cameo, but it's not Tom Hardy. It's somebody else that they cast to play him. Just for like, you have to blink. If you blink, you'll miss it, kind of thing.
Interesting.
So it's interesting. All this weird family drama dynamic kind of stuff happening at the same time. This is officially hearsay and rumor stuff. So I don't know how much of this is factual. But Charlize Theron was like complete consummate professional, always on time, always on set, and Hardy was always in his trailer. And who knows. So there was already a butting of the heads. But because of that, and because of how awesome Charlize Theron is, like they kind of use that, and so when you watch the movie, she's actually pretty pissed off about stuff, and it shows, and it makes a masterpiece of a movie. It's so weird because you're driving humans crazy making the thing. Like I think there was even a thing where she had an aversion to dust, and then she rolled around in the dust to make herself angry. She says, "Now I'm ready," and then she went and yeah, she was. It's like every shot she's in, she looks ready. Like she wants to kick anybody's ass that's in front of her, including probably Hardy's. But I don't know if you saw any of that stuff. I thought that was kind of a funny thing to just kind of throw at the side here while we're jumping all over the place.
No, I mean, I think, yeah, all of that is true, at least according to everybody involved.
Wow.
Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron are both very open about the fact that there was a lot of tension between them on
Wow.
set. And George Miller is on
Wow.
record like, yeah, I don't get it. I have no idea why they were so angry at each other. But it was just a personality conflict. And that the fight, the big fight between Max and Furiosa in the desert, like there was a lot of reality, right? Like, it was choreographed, of course, but there was a lot of actual emotions being let out in that in that
Wow.
sequence. And
That's crazy.
yes, I have also heard that Miller is reluctant to work with Tom Hardy again as
Man.
Mac Rockastansky. Yeah. Um,
Which is a bummer. I mean, as a fan, I thought he was great
oh, I
as
know.
a Mad Max. I mean, as a consumer, I thought, wow, yeah, Mad Max, he's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, if you got to work with an artist in a difficult, I don't blame Miller. Moving on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, it is a shame. It's unclear. I mean, George Miller is in his mid to late 70s at this point, right?
Yeah, I
Uh,
thought he was broaching. I thought he was broaching 80.
yeah, he
But
is.
okay,
He's on the far side of 70, and
okay.
he sort of half jokingly in interviews has said that he's come out of retirement to make Furiosa, right? So
Oh, yeah.
if this isn't his last movie, it's one of his last movies, right? Um, and so we might not ever see another Mad Max movie after Furiosa. And if it is as good as the reviews have been saying it is, then I'm okay with that, right? I mean, his penultimate film, Fury Road, is a masterpiece of filmmaking, in
Mhm.
my opinion, and I think it'll go down as a classic in the long run. Um, uh, and that's okay too, right? Like so we'll see. I don't. I'm going to see it on Wednesday. I will report in next week. And I have, very clearly stated what my biases are towards the movies. So anything that I say, you need to hedge against my admitted preconceived biases. Um, but no, I love George Miller. Like you said, he's a phenomenal director. You can't pin him down. He is just all over the place. Um,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, is this the guy who directed Happy Feet about
Yeah, he's
tap dancing penguin, CG cartoon tap dancing penguin, and Fury Road, right? I mean, you cannot pin this guy down.
yeah. No, he's multi-talented when it comes to that medium. No
Yeah,
doubt about it.
and he directed Babe for God's sake,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
he helped coin one of maybe the most popular quotes of all time. That'll do, pig. I think everybody knows that line, and I don't think most people know that came from a George Miller movie, or that James Cromwell is the one who said that line of dialogue.
I always hear James Cromwell's voice whenever I
Yeah,
hear it.
yeah.
Yeah, he did a great job.
Um,
Um,
yeah. So, yeah, he is a remarkable filmmaker, and I have always said that Fury Road was George Miller taking his, life's work and putting all of his experience into one movie, and to come full circle, make it look easy, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you once you look into how challenging, how difficult it was to make that movie, you go, I can't believe it. But when you watch Fury Road, the whole thing feels effortless. It feels like it could
Hmm.
not be anything other than what it is, right?
Yeah.
It seems preordained. It's so well constructed, and it's a master filmmaker, um, just completely using all of his talents to make, again, one of my favorite three movies of all time.
Yeah.
Top three
Absolutely.
favorite
Yeah.
movies
I'm
of all
with you.
time.
I got to think about my list and rework it. I think at this point, there's been a lot of really good movies, but it's up there for sure. Top 10, easy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
But
As far as animation stuff goes tonight, I've kind of been focused on Mayor. I think
yeah.
I'm at a good point to wrap up. Um, but yeah, as I was working, I ended up doing a rear view. What
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed here, uh, I've been wanting, like, I did the rear view first, and I was going to drop this in here, but I do want to have at least a little bit of eye contact and like us as a viewer seeing a couple of three-quarter faces.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the rule is. Maybe you've seen it in live theater, but I think I remember. I don't remember if it was in film class back when I was, back in the day. But you try not to do too many shots with the back of a human towards camera because it kind of disengages us as humans in a subliminal kind of way. It's sort of
Mm-hmm.
like it's not exactly like the uncanny valley, like when you're watching a 3D thing and it's trying to be realistic, but there's the same kind of off-putting kind of thing that kind of happens where you're not as engaged. So what's great about the shot is we do have Calamity Jane looking at camera, but everybody else is pretty much back to camera. But I remember when I was drawing this, I wanted to make sure at least Mayor, because he's actually engaging with Calamity Jane, we actually see some of his face. And it's not looking at the viewer, but at least we have something that kind of helps draw a more human feeling to it. Um, Even with Mitchell, I think at the time when in my original sketch, I don't know if it's here, I can't really delete it, but I think we even saw the side of his little eye slit on the side, but it doesn't really make sense because of the
Right.
way his back is
Right.
looking.
Right.
So
Right.
I think we'll leave that alone. But anyways, yeah. So just some this shot needs a little bit of work and some massaging. So I'll be on this for a little while, just kind of making sure scale's right, size is right, uh, the layout's right. But all the pieces are getting into place, so we're in good shape.
Excellent.
Unfortunately, yeah, and unfortunately I didn't get to Wanda, but I'll try to do Wanda maybe next week or um, whatever on our next stream.
That sounds great. Yeah, we've been going, I mean, for 50 minutes now, so we had a lot to talk about, as we always do. So we'll end it there. And as you said in your stream running solo, and I appreciate the sentiment, I'm much better at the closings than you are. So I will now
Yes. No.
do my rehearsed practice closings, my closing remarks, if you will. Anyway, you can always check us out on calamityjane.rocks. That'll take you right to our Patreon site. Please consider subscribing, helping us make this cartoon a reality. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook, which presumably you already have because you're watching this stream. We're also on Instagram at Calamity Jane Salamander. We do weekly posts about just fun concept art, and I ruminate on them a little bit. James does the art, and then I wax intellectual in the notes. We also post links to other random stuff on there as well, so check the Instagram page out. And otherwise, we'll be back at the same Calamity channel, same Calamity time next week. Good night, everybody.
Good night.